two questions linked to education, particularly school funding. And one of the questions is from a student themselves. So I'd like to read that question out first if I can, and invite the candidates to respond to that. This particular student says that she's 9 years old and says that she's worried that our school might lose due to loss of money. But what would be your plans for the next 5 years? School funding. And if we can have Thelma.
Okay. Yes, well, obviously, those of you who do know me in the room know I'm a former teacher and head teacher, still in close contact with a lot of my colleagues in the education profession. And the fact that the questions from a child says an awful lot to me, because there's a line in a Wordsworth poem that says the child is father of the man, and that really has shaped my philosophy about how we can learn from children. And the thing is, these cuts to our schools, in our constituency, it's going to be over £9 million cuts to our local schools. The fact is, who's been hit the hardest? It'll be the children. It'll be the children. I mean, obviously staff are really concerned because it could mean staff cuts. It means head teachers and governing bodies having to prioritise how those savings will be made. In a time of rising need, if you think about the cutbacks to support for mental health, children are going through their education under pressure with a joyless curriculum of targets and tests these days because we cannot afford to offer the music and the creative arts that we should be doing. Labour's pledging a pupil premium, an arts pupil premium, along with increased funding of over £6 billion per year to invest in our future. Children are our future, and this child's question, she's saying, you grown-ups are deciding my future for me, and you're making cuts to my education and my entitlement. Education is a right, not a privilege. And any cuts to education is a cut to children's future, their future, and I'm totally against it. And Labour will reinvest in education, and we will have a national education service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrew, thank you.
I'm a school governor in Mount Pleasant at Watford, and so one of the issues that they very well may be facing is the prospect of losing the funding for a teacher. So it's real, it's very real. Education will get worse. And one of the things that was protected for a good number of years, we saw local authority, I'm a Kirklees councillor, and one of the things that was protected for years and years was education. Everything else was deeply threatened, as we can see from the diminishing services around us, but education wasn't. And so now that's under threat. And so the question for me is what isn't out there that we can't protect? What is important? And what I find absolutely flabbergasting is just as funding is being cut, they're experimenting with grammar schools, and free schools, and academies, and they're tearing apart and fragmenting the education system. I believe every school, every child who goes to every school, I believe that their local school should be a good school. Everyone's local school. We shouldn't be trying to pit people against each other in some sort of putting people to a league table. Are we a divided society enough? Do they want to divide us further? Remainers, leavers? People who went to an academy? People who didn't go to an academy? We ought to have a single education system for this country, which is a good education system. That is a simple idea. And that's what we need. And that's why we need to get rid of this fetishism with grammars, fetishism with free schools, and invest that money back in the education system where it belongs.
agree with everything Andrew said there, actually. We're very lucky to have fantastic schools in our area. Some are LEA controlled, some are academies, some are cooperative trusts. So maybe sometimes one size doesn't fit all. And as somebody on this stage knows, I'm a regular visitor to all my schools and I work very, very closely with them. And I've been listening to head teachers ever since I became a Member of Parliament in 2010. I've become aware of the cost pressures and the budgetary pressures, and that's why I've been meeting with schools ministers, secretaries of state, and making the case for our local schools. I was also being urged for the government to crack on with the new fairer funding formula by many local head teachers. One of the things, though, I wasn't happy with is that it could have disadvantaged financially some of our local schools. Not by some of the amounts being put out by the schools' unions, though, and some of you may have seen this article in the Huddersfield Examiner, where many of the local head teachers actually said a lot of the projections were real scaremongering of cuts because they were 90% over the reality. But even if it's 1% cut, I'm not happy with that as a local Member of Parliament. I want all of our local schools well funded. So that's why I've been meeting with Justine Greening, the Secretary of State, and I'm pleased now that under the Conservatives we will make sure that no school will face a budget cut as a result of the fairer funding formula. Our schools have to be fully funded, well funded and well supported, and that's what they'll get under a Conservative government.
Thank you. Every child starting off in life deserves the best opportunities and the best education that they can get. Liberal Democrats have said they will invest the $7 billion into education so that no school loses money in cash terms, in real terms. And also tripling the early years pupil premium. And we will also oppose divisive grammar schools. What we've seen up and down the country and in our part of the world here, all the schools will face a cut. Jason referred to the fair funding, which is not fair, it's not funding, it's a cut. Ask head teachers, the reality is they're going to face cuts. Children's futures, their education will suffer as a result. Education is key to a fairer society, and we must oppose the Conservative cuts.